last time we were chatting, you had you gotten the boat in the water, you gotten everything ready, and you were about ready to cast off. You were heading from Portsmouth, Rhode Island, to Block Island. So tell us a little bit about that adventure, because I know I was getting some text messages from you at some point during that trip, and it was a bit of an adventure for you.
Yeah, well, got everything ready. Did a check on the sailboat before I pulled out of the slip at Portsmouth again. Checked all the lights and stuff, because I was having a problem with the starboard running light. You could just tap it, and it has a loose fixture. So I was kind of worried about that, but I got it to stay on for a while. So then I pulled out of the slip, and that was kind of funny because, I started doing the in and out and stuff, and I wasn't, this was the first time I wasn't real comfortable with it. So I ended up backing into the fuel dock and fueling up and getting the pump out. And then that was probably about 3, and I was pretty close to 4 when I finally got off of the fuel dock.
Yeah.
So then I just headed out, and, I was like, I set myself like a period of point of no return. If I was happy with it, I would just go on.
You were going to kind of like a shakedown.
This was a shakedown, and maybe a first leg.
And if nothing broke during the first part of the trip, you were going to just keep going to Block Island.
Yeah. So after about 45 minutes heading that way, I was comfortable, and I said, I'm good, and let her loose.
Right. So tell us about the weather. How was the wind?
It was nice when I headed out. I had a nose wind right down, but I put the sail up for stability. Probably set it a little over half throttle, just, and then texted you and said I was off and everything was okay, kind of thing, and had pretty smooth running. I remember I was pretty close to a big naval base out there when I ran her out of gas the first time there. And so but that it was starting to get a little rough, but wasn't bad, and I was able to just fuel up and got her primed and started back up and headed back to Block Island. And I'd say about probably 45 minutes after that's when it started getting choppy, and I started getting 4-foot swells, and it was night by then.
Wow.
Just pure blackness.
So you were just navigating off the little handheld GPS in your phone at that point? Yeah,
I had the Garmin and the Navionics in hand, and
right.
That was a big help that night, because that Garmin with the red-green line kind of was a big help, because it was dark and I was going I really couldn't see.
Right. But so I guess eventually you did reach Block Island.
Yeah.
About what time?
I kept a straight line pretty much in there.
Must have been very late at night.
Yeah, I was hoping, when I took off, I was thinking I would hit about 9:30. Ended up being after midnight, But the weather, by the time I got to Block Island, the weather had, to where I could see a little bit better. And I pulled in towards the entrance of Salt Pond, and since I was unfamiliar and I saw on the Garmin a lot of low spots, I was like, I don't think I'll do that. So I headed around the south side and found the lighthouse. And I saw that there was a fish trap below the lighthouse, so I figured I could find some place I could get my anchor to stick there. So I searched around and found about 39 foot and dropped her. And went right to sleep.
I spent the night
I was really tired.
On the hook there. So next morning, I guess your plan was to get up and
I was going to hit
pull the hook and go into the salt pond and
see if I could find a slip. It was 3rd of July.
3rd of July, right? So it was like going to be 4th of July, Block Island. Right. Yeah, it was the 3rd.
It was the 2nd. Well, it was the 3rd that day. Yeah, I headed out on the 2nd. Yeah. That's the 3rd, right?
Because the next day was going to be 4th of July.
Because the 4th of July.
Fireworks at Block Island. Lots of partying going on.
So I start the engine. I head up there and pull up the 35-pound CQR, which came up pretty good. And that was my first time pulling it, so it was interesting. Because I don't have a roller or anything, so I'm hand pulling this up over the rail and then having the hand tied across the front so it doesn't bother the furler.
Wow.
so I get that off, and then I get back into the cockpit, and you know, the motor's running. I always do that before I start pulling up the anchor, just in case. So hopefully I can scramble back and save myself. But so I pull all that off, and right when I put her into gear, she dies, and she never started again.
Right.
And
So,
I kept on probably 4 hours that morning trying to get her started and going over things, and just nothing. And finally, I think I texted you and said, "Do you think I should call Boat US?" And you were like, "Yeah, it's probably a good idea at this point." So, and I was adrift the whole time. I didn't set the anchor again because it was such a pain to get up. But you know, it was a nice control. You know, the weather was perfect for it. You know, I was kind of staying right in that area. So I called Boat US. They were real prompt. I think within less than an hour they were there and picked me up. Of course, he gave me the, you know, it's the 3rd. I don't know how much you're going to get done on the island here. And I was like, yeah, I understand that. So en route, you know, he hooks me up, and about halfway en route, he says the harbor master's going to send a guy out because I'm handicapped to help put me on the mooring ball. And I was like, on the mooring ball? And he was like, yeah, that's all they've got. There's not a slip open. It's
4th of July weekend.
4th of July weekend, yeah. And it was covered up. There wasn't, you know, I was on an emergency mooring ball in the entrance. And you could see every spot was filled with a boat.
Right.
Every mooring ball was filled with a boat.
Right.
Every slip was full.
Right.
Popular place on 4th of July.
Yeah. I guess it's more fun if your engine's running.
Yeah. So towboat takes me in there. They put me on the mooring ball, and then they inform me that I'm not going to get any help. That not only is it 4th of July weekend, but there's nobody on Block Island that works on outboard. So I was like, well, okay, how about, you know, I just dinghy into some parts stores, and they were like, well, there's not any of those either, and even if there was, it's 4th of July weekend. So I was like, yeah. But the towboat guy was great. He tried to get some friends to come out and look at the motor. Wasn't able to. He came back out himself and tried to start my motor and looked at it for me. And then at that point, he said, you know, probably your best option is going to be for me to take you back out so you can sail over to Mystic. And that's exactly what happened the next day.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So I remember getting those texts from you saying, well, probably going to, even though it was the 4th of July, you weren't so happy about being in Block Island. And you're like, I'm out of here. I'm just gonna sail out of this harbor. And when I get close to Mystic, I'm going to call Boat US and have them come get me and tow me in somewhere. And we were trying to figure out what marina to go to. But yeah, let's pick it up.
The Boat US guy at Block Island was really helpful towards that and basically let me know that my best option was probably to head to Mystic, because even after 4th of July weekend, I wasn't going to get any real help there for my issue, because it was just... So I took his advice, and he was there promptly after. He was, unfortunately, I had to wait half the day because he had so much business he couldn't break. You know, he had 3 tows before he could get to me just to pull me out there. But he did, and
so he came in,
and he waited around till he saw I was headed towards Mystic and good to go.
He got you off the mooring ball.
He
towed you out of the harbor, and
he literally went up there and pulled the mooring ball off for me, then jumped back on his towboat and towed me out there. Yeah, great guy. But you know, all the Boat US guys, I mean, you know, great service.
And you had reasonably fair winds for that trip. I mean, the wind was blowing you in the right direction, right?
At first, it was actually excellent. I was doing 6 knots out of Block Island.
Right.
And then about halfway, there was something coming in, and it dropped off to 2, you know, and 2 to 3. And so, with wing on wing, I was doing 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And but I was happy, and I was, you know, still 2 to 3. I was happy with that and making my way, no problem. It was in course, you know, so wind was with me and everything, couldn't beat it, you know. And, you know, luckily for me, Boat US guy calls me up and says, we see some weather's heading your way, which I had no idea. I should have known when the wind dropped off. That.
All right, so Boat US sort of saw the weather was inbound and gave you a ring on and said, look, we're going to come out and meet you somewhere.
Yeah, and I was probably halfway there, maybe not even, you know. But he said it was from the looks of it, it was definitely going to hit me before I was going to get to where I was going to call him to come bring me into the mouth of Mystic there. So he was on his way, and I just kind of kept course until he showed up. And he hooked up and then took me into Mystic, into Brewers.
Brewers Yacht Yard or whatever that
Yeah, because I had called ahead, and that was about the only one. I was trying to get the yard that Tony had recommended, but
no slips.
They had no slips, and they had changed owners from the ones that Tony knew. So we went into Brewers.
Right. So you got into Brewers, you got into Mystic, you had a broken engine.
Yeah, dead sticked in, and then towboat into my slip.
Right. So you got into Mystic, and I guess the first order of business was to try to figure out what was wrong with the engine and find somebody to fix it. I know you spent
I already had a good idea from Block Island, what it was, because I'd narrowed down all the, I'd actually conversed with you on it, and you were slinging, try this, and I was like, yeah, I've done that, and yeah. So, I knew it wasn't a fuel problem, and I knew it was down to ignition fire, but I wasn't sure what part of the ignition it was.
Right.
And then shortly, I guess in the second day after Brewers, I realized that it was a spark plug wire.
Right.
Only because I saw a couple pieces of heat shrink done on it,
Right. So I think, if I recall correctly, the old Facebook network kicked in again.
Oh yeah, and Tony Weatherford having his friend that owned the marina there at Fort Rachel Marina, Dutcha. She came and helped me.
Right. But I think there was I believe I received a message on Facebook, somebody saying that they had some friends that were nearby and that were willing to come by and give you a ride to West Marine or something like that. And I guess you connected with them.
That was Eva, yeah. And they were the ones that took me, and I was able to order parts, which I thought would be 3 days later, but that turned into a lot longer.
Yeah, there was a little drama. I guess drama is a strong word, but drama with West Marine getting your parts for you. I think. Want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, they got the coils in there. It wasn't really their fault. It was just, a confusion of what type of coil wire was with that Johnson. That particular one was a very strange coil wire, and some of them were the screw-ons, and some of them were just the popping clip-on type thing. And they'd ordered the screw-on, and somebody had already converted that motor, and it was the clip-on. So. But again, the manager of West Marine was great. He took 2 of the shortest, really high-performance coil wires out of sets and brought them to me personally. He brought them and handed them to me. So, can't fault him on that. They really came out for me there. And when I did, she started up. And it ran real rough. Took me about 2 or 3 days to get her idling again. And then right when I get her purring pretty good, I get a call from Defender. And I actually thought I was on some kind of prank show or something. I was looking around because I'd just gotten it running decent. And they're like, we have a motor for you, sir. And I'm like, what? And I was like, okay, that's real funny, now that I've got this one running. And they're like, no, sir, really, we have a motor for you. An anonymous supporter has bought you a motor, and you need to come pick it up. So, and that took me 2 or 3 days to get somebody. And luckily, it was one of the people right there at Brewers, real nice people. He... which ended up a good story because he was a nuclear propulsion submarine guy there, the head guy of that, and he gave me a ride over to Waterford, which is a good 15 minutes away from Mystic there, and picked up the engine and brought it back.
Tell us about the engine.
Huh?
Tell us about the engine.
With the Tohatsu 9.8 25-inch shaft, great motor. Yeah, it's awesome.
4-stroke,
lots of propulsion. Yeah, not seeing a rainbow stream of oil behind the boat anymore.
Yeah, so you're pretty much like a kid at Christmas then.
Well, it just amazed me. It only takes about half throttle to get to plane, and Yeah, it's amazing. The propulsion on it is just, it's like night and day in comparison. It really pushes that boat.
So you went over, got the engine. Now you're stuck with like, I don't know, 30 gallons of 50-to-1 mix.
No, I had 15 gallons, which I ended up giving, since he had a dinghy. I just gave that to the nuclear propulsion guy because I didn't want to carry any more weight than I had to.
Right.
So
Right.
we kind of swapped out, and I got some regular fuel for the mixed fuel. So
Right. And so you were there. That took a while because all of that, getting the engine parts, getting everything, getting your new engine on.
Almost 2 weeks or more, maybe
Right.
a couple of days more. Yeah.
And I guess when you arrived at Brewers, you didn't really check in.
No, well, it's a like 300 yards of gravel is what Brewers Mystic lot was, and I went up there once because I didn't know where the bathroom was, and that was the last trip and that was that night, which was the night I lost my wallet also.
Another drama.
Yeah, but so that was a really long haul in a wheelchair across, and this isn't like regular gravel; it's like big pieces of granite, so it's like marbles.
Right.
So I'm just kind of, going nowhere.
Right. So you never really checked in, and then after.
No, that was, I'd gotten in at after 10 that night, so there wasn't even anybody on fuel docks. They leave at like 8, I think.
So after, I don't know, whatever, 5, 6, 7 days, I remember getting a text from you saying, hey, they're like banging on my hull looking for me.
Yeah, they didn't even know I was there until that morning. Yeah, so I'd been there for more than a week before they even noticed me.
Right.
And it's because, luckily for me, they did have a handicap facility up by the pool. So I kind of had a private bathroom up there, and that's pretty much all. I was going back and forth to the pool and the bathroom, and that was it, keeping a low profile. The only days they even saw me was when I was waiting for a ride.
But apparently at some point they needed the slip.
They were putting another boat in the slip we didn't know you were there, and we need to put a boat there. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So
it was kind of like, well, you need to check in and pay for your slip.
So then they're like, we had no idea how long you've been here.
Well, I think they, in the end, they decided you had been there since the 8th. I think you got there on the 4th.
That worked.
So you had a little discount.
We weren't going to argue with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a little discount there, and I think again, you found a sponsor to help you out with the slip fees. So I guess that was, you had a new engine, you had boat all ready to go. You had spent some time in Mystic, which you told me you thought was a pretty nice place. I guess you had a chance to look around the old harbor and.
Yeah, I got to go to Seaport, and that's about all I did. Yeah. And
see that big old whaling ship that they have there.
Yeah, I got
Charles
pics
Morgan.
of that. That was that's a neat little setup. The way they brought in it's man-made, but the way they kind of made it like an old seaport would have been, it's really nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an enjoyable place to stop. Definitely, I'm glad I did.
So with the engine, new engine, so that problem solved, and the boat's about ready to go. You were thinking about the next leg south, right? It was time to head out, and I guess when we talk next time, we'll talk about how the fun you had sailing down Long Island Sound and through Hell's Gate and over to Sandy Hook, and then eventually out into the Atlantic.